Now, over the weekend, the centre has unveiled the new Unified Pension Scheme, the UPS, for government employees. That basically is a marked departure from the NPS scheme, which is the new pension scheme, and also different from the old pension scheme, which was, of course, prevalent for government employees who joined before 2004. Many, of course, have called it, something which the government is doing with an eye on the elections. Many of these states which are going to polls have been demanding a restoration of the old pension scheme, and more. Some are still, unions, etc. For example, states like Haryana are still saying that this is not enough. We need, nothing will do but a restoration of the old pension scheme. Let's talk about this a little bit with Indranil Sengupta. He's Professor of Practice at Shiv Nadar University. He's, of course, also a a veteran analyst from financial markets. It's really great to have you with us here on the program. Sanjeev Srivastava is senior journalist. Sanjeev, great to have you back on the program. Thank you very much. Indranil, so how should we look at this UPS? The government is saying, well, it's a balance between NPS and OPS. In terms of actual fiscal implications, from what the government itself has shared, it's not very much, right? Because there is the contributory element which is there under this UPS, which was not there under OPS, although the government is picking up the tab a little bit more. So your first thoughts, Indranil?
So I think that, first of all, thank you for having me. I would say that if you look at the OPS, that let us index at 100. The NPS was somewhere around 20. The UPS is going to be somewhere around 80. So in the OPS, obviously, it was a defined benefit concept. In the NPS, it was a defined contribution. But then obviously, given that government salaries are what they are, that fell dramatically from the OPS levels. In the current UPS, it's closer to the OPS, I will say. But of course, you are still making some contribution. So that's one.
Right.
The second is that I don't worry about the fisc too much because this has been going on. It's all, currently the government is, has a fiscal outgo pretty much on the OPS levels. And for the NPS to have worked at all, given that the first, most likely people who joined at 2004 were at least born 1980, they would retire in 2040. And then for that to become a significant cohort would have been 2050, 2060. At the same time, there is going to be a substantial wealth effect, and that should actually lead to more demand for, maybe autos, maybe housing, and that should also be a boost to the economy.
And we should put that out. What you're saying is the net present value under, if NPS was 20, under the new UPS is 80. It's not quite 100 like it was under OPS, but it goes up to 80, close to the old pension scheme, right?
Yeah.
So it's substantially more for employees under the UPS. Got it. I'm going to come back to you on that wealth effect point because that's interesting. Sanjeev, your first thoughts on what has been done and whether this is now going to be broadly acceptable?
See, so whether it will be broadly acceptable or not, Prashant, is depending on how much the unions can press for more. Because clearly an indication is coming from the government that they are willing to be, or they are vulnerable or susceptible to being pressed for more. So this entire exercise is another step on another link in that trying to process the election outcome of 2024, wherein the BJP missed out on majority. So I wouldn't say that this is a rollback, but or some kind of scaling down in a big way, but it is what the government is trying to learn from the election outcome as to why they lost out. So one reason they have attributed to, and I don't fully agree to that, they lost out because of the OPS not being there, but this trying to please different constituencies, keeping that on the radar, this step is being taken. So somebody like you or Indranil will be better able to crunch the numbers, whether it's 80 on the old pension scheme and new pension scheme scale or 70 or 85. But what it signals is that the government, they're both positive and negatives to it. Negative is that they have become vulnerable, whether it's the Waqf thing being referred to the parliamentary committee going, or other things, and this is another link in that direction. But the positive is that they are very good to adapt. So they are trying to learn from what real or perceived mistakes they made. So these are constituencies they want to address and get them back on board before the next election. I think it will be too late for a Maharashtra or Haryana kind of an election, but the big elections coming up, including the next big election, general election. So, but what is clear is that the government is vulnerable vulnerable to listening, which was less of a listening government few months back. So that is both good and bad of how much a wealth effect is created, what really is...
Sanjeev, points taken and good points there. By the way, the elections are still not that far away there. We don't know. But what's your number for Maharashtra?
Mine?
You always have... Yeah.
You always put me on a spot. Well, I think Maharashtra, I don't have a number, but I think the BJP and its allies, which is the present government, they are all on the back foot. So as things stand, they should lose.
Okay, all right. So at the margin, this may help, but will not do quite enough, the pension thing, right? I mean, it's just one constituency in that sense.
Yeah, because the government can't afford to keep sitting on its heels. They are 240 in the national parliament, and if they lose some key states, they need to be acting, and that's what I see as a positive for this government. At least they are proactive. They're trying to course correct. Now, whether that course correction will help or not, nobody really knows the answer. But at least they are reactive, which they were choosing not to react in the run-up to elections.
Indranil, let's come to the wealth effect. So, first of all, a lot of this will only start to show up post-2000, approximately 39-40, right? Because for those who joined after, for those who joined after 2004, right, who entered service after that. But do you see this leading to increased spending in that sense? Because would people have not spent on a car or something on the wedding because thinking, well, the pension is lower? I mean, I'm just trying to understand what will this do for employees here and now over the next couple of years?
See, the fiscal cost is 2040 plus.
Yeah.
But the wealth effect is immediate. In the sense that, earlier you were staring at a scenario where you would get only, say, 20 rupees to live your life beyond retirement. I mean, this is assuming you live a while. But now you see that going up to 80. So the savings that you were having to make on, your retired life, now you can spend that today. Invest that today, maybe, whether it is in a house, whether it is in a better car or whatever. So the point I'm making is that, the impact on the fisc is going to come much later, but the impact on individuals' sense of well-being is going to come right now.
And typically something like this shows up in which segments? Which sectors or subsectors?
So I would think that housing is the biggest one, because the government housing loan is also very limited given the current market prices. Cars could be another. So housing, I mean, that gets to its whole interrelated sectors of cement and so on. But then I think that is where most of the wealth effect that civil servants will get will go.
Got it. Gentlemen, a longer chat, but later. Thank you very much for joining us with an interesting sort of perspective on the pension bit and, of course, politics as well. Indranil, good to speak with you in the new avatar, and here's to many more. And Sanjeev, always a pleasure having you with us here on CNBC-TV18. Thank you very much.